listen, it does not need to be a new year, a new you. It just needs to be a new year, a healthier you. Because sure, okay, they trying to take us down at every front. So get some TLC products and up that metabolism and up that energy and up that immune system, okay, that digestive system. Get that all together with these TLC products right here. And don't forget, okay, sign up for ifyoucanmove.com and become a part of the online gym and shed the pounds, honey. We're starting a new challenge on January 3rd, and I would love to see y'all there. Get the links down below. Hey everybody, what's up? It's your girl Bondy Blue, and I am back for another This Is Us review. Let's go ahead and get into it. This episode so good. I watched it the first time just to kind of like enjoy it as a viewer, and then the second time I watched it to make my notes, I actually cried most of the episode. Like, why must you do this to us? This is us. Like, why must the writers do these things where you just have to cry for most of the damn episode? Okay, I had to blot. I was Candace out this bitch. Okay, I was Candace Dillard Bassett with the Kleenex. Okay, just blotting and blotting and blotting. Okay, oh, it was a beautiful episode. Let's get into it. So Randall and Beth are on their way to New Orleans, and they are reminiscing on the last time they were in New Orleans for their 5th year anniversary. And they actually took absent for the first time. And Randall hunched Beth for about 6 hours. And I was just kind of like, oh my God. Child, I guess we need to go to the French Quarter and find some damn absinthe. Randall brings it back to his mom, possibly have passing him on the street all those years ago and never knowing it. And just another moment where he feels such deep pain and regret behind not knowing who his birth parents were his whole life. So they pull up to this cottage style house on a lake. And I'm trying to figure out where in the city could this house possibly be. Like, the only thing I could think about was the bayou. Like, it looked like maybe Bayou St. John, but like they were like, it's the lake. And I'm like, child, where they got houses, what a house on a lake at? Where is this at? Right here. Like, I know they didn't shoot this in actual New Orleans because the close-up scenes weren't in any places that I could like pinpoint and be like, oh, I know where that's at. Like, no, none of that looked like the city. They had aerials, but you can get aerials anywhere. So I just kind of was like, yeah, I wish. I wish I could have a house like that on the lake in Orleans Parish. Okay, that looked like something on the outskirts. That don't look like Orleans Parish. I thought maybe Algiers, but then I was like, I don't know. But either way, Hy introduces himself and says that the house is actually Randall's house now. It was his mother's and she left it to him. So they sit down and we get some backstory on Laurel. She was a Dubois, okay? She was from a distinguished Black family here in New Orleans. And the way he explained it, like the most distinct, like there's no such thing. Like, there were so many rich Black families or distinguished Black families in New Orleans. Like, I could think of many names, so that's kind of why I was like, yeah, I don't think there's such thing as the most, okay? So Laurel's father is actually played by one of my favorite actors, but I never remember his real name because if you were in What's Love Got to Do with It, you are usually your character in What's Love Got to Do with It for me. Okay, so he's Frost. He's always been Frost. He's been Frost since he was Ike's best friend and What's Love Got to Do with It. Okay, where you going? This ain't Flower. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah. Okay, he had very mentionable quotes in the movie. Okay, that is Frost. But Frost, is dressed as this disciplinarian, church-going, business-minded Black man, obviously has a lot of dignity and power in the community. His house is beautiful. They're with the respectability politics. They're listening to opera and classical and Bach and Beethoven and all of that and Mahalia Jackson. Like, they doing the most. Okay, so Laurel definitely comes from an influential family. And with influence comes pressure. And Laurel is definitely feeling the pressure of not being the daughter that her father wants her to be. Her oldest brother, Jackson, covers for Laurel when she goes to see her Aunt May. Okay, her Aunt May is the original owner of the home, the lake house. She has a beautiful garden, and she goes over to Aunt May's and they spend the day together, in the garden, and then they get in the lake and they go swimming. And, it's just this beautiful, peaceful, just serene moment for Laurel. And you can tell that her aunt is her escape. She goes back home that night. Her brother thinks that he's sneaking her back in, but the dad is up waiting on her. Laurel, where have you been? And don't you fix your mouth to lie to me. Okay? And her hair is all in a disarray from swimming. So she has to say she's with Aunt May. And he's upset. He forbade it. All right. Apparently, him and his sister don't get along very well. And you can tell it's because they see the world differently. Okay. So the next day, she has to go through the trauma of getting her hair straightened. And you guys, when I watched this, I can remember moments where I was being a complete and total kid. Like this one time, I'll never forget it. My mom must have spent like, a whole, couple of hours one day straightening my hair. My mom's a hairdresser. Okay. So I used to get my hair done all the time. All right. And as a kid, I remember one day I go outside and it's raining. And for some reason, the rain felt so good on my face. So I just kind of stood there and let this rain fall on my face, completely embedded in this childlike moment. And I hear my mom, Brittany, what are you doing? Get out of the damn rain. You're getting your hair messed up. And it's like shocks me out of this like beautifully childlike moment to remind me that I have to worry about my hair. It's probably why I cut it all off when I was 16. Like the feeling of being tied to your hair in every move you making, having to be dependent upon your hair and what your hair is going to look like. I know they didn't delve that deeply into it, but that moment where she's sitting there going through the pain of having her mom hot combing her hair, I think all of us Black girls have those moments, especially if we have really kinky hair that, either when the rain hits it or when it's too humid or whatever, you just always had to worry about your hair. And that is one of the freeing things about cutting all your hair off. If y'all ever thought about doing it, I feel like a lot of women should experience that. I know everybody wants to be worried about their head shape and all of that type of shit. But I think it's a freeing thing to get into the shower, to just let the water wash over your head and not even have a care in the world for the style. Now, I don't know how I'm going to feel once I straighten my hair, but which is going to happen soon. But I still feel like as a child, you should have the freedom. You know what I'm saying? And when you're an adult, you want to make different decisions about your hair. That's fine. But like as a child, I should have to go through that traumatic experience all because she wanted to like enjoy the lake that day. It just put a lot into perspective for me for what little Black girls kind of go through in this life. So after she finishes getting her hair laid, she goes to hide out in her brother's room, and he's doing some work and listening to Mahalia Jackson. And she tells him that she doesn't understand how daddy could hate his own sister. And, she's the only one that gets her besides him, besides Jackson. So we understand that Laurel had a really strong connection and attachment to her brother. And he went to the Vietnam War and he was killed. But the day that they came to tell her that he was killed, she was in his room smelling his shirt. When they come to knock on the door and tell you that your loved one is gone because of a war that really didn't need to happen. Child, it's a lot. It's a lot of anger that boils up inside of you when something like that happens. I feel like also reminds me of like my mom telling me how they used to listen to the What's Going On album all the time. And like the memory she has linked to that album the most is when her uncle was coming home from Vietnam, from the war. And I was just like, wow, when you think about that and how music really will frame a time, boy, because they were in the house listening to that Mahalia Jackson song, His Eye is on the Sparrow. And it is such a powerful and sad song. So the fact that they were listening to that while this happened, it really made it harder to not cry. Like if you wasn't crying at this point, child, I was. So she sits at the lake with her Aunt May after the funeral, covered in grief. It's all over her. And Aunt May tells her that she has to learn how to let it go. And she says, I don't know how. So Aunt May tells her that whenever something is wrong with her, she goes out there into the lake and she lets it all out into the lake. And that's what Laurel does. She goes into the lake and she screams all of this pain out. And I was reminded of this moment where Iyanla had a man scream into a hole in the ground, because putting your emotional trauma into the earth or into the elements is considered a form of healing. And I was just kind of like, wow. It also reminds me why I often feel such a longing for the beach. Such a longing for the beach. And it's because it's a place that I release without even realizing it. As a child, we used to go to Pass Christian, which is in Mississippi, all the time. And probably a place where we've had some of our like more serious conversations was at the beach. Sometimes really in the water talking, or just, swimming on our backs, like bathing in the sun. Like it's a whole situation for me being close to water, which is why it's like my dream to actually have a beach house and be able to walk out into the water every day if I see fit. You know what I'm saying? That's my dream for myself. Maybe one day I'll be able to accomplish that. But this scene really tapped into the necessity of that for me. And it was just such a beautiful moment. Like it definitely made you feel what the character is feeling. So Randall stops the story and asks Kai how he knew his mother. Kai says that she was the love of his life. And then he starts to explain how the church brought a lot of them to New Orleans. And at first I was like, I think he's talking about Vietnamese, because here we have a large population of Vietnamese people. Like that's the most Asian, Asiatic people that live here in Louisiana are the Vietnamese people. I don't remember having like a lot of Chinese or Koreans like they have in other places. And I've even met a Japanese man before who came to our school back when I was a kid, but I didn't even see a lot of them, around a lot like that. So most of my upbringing, I have been around Vietnamese people, whether in nail salons or owning corner stores where I grew up. Watching it, like, I hope they talking about Vietnamese people, because otherwise this would not be correct. And it also made sense because Vietnam is very swampy and warm and hot like it is here in New Orleans. So it also added to the story of how when Hyde came to New Orleans, he became a fisherman, because it was much like what he did at home. And he was there taking care of his older parents. So when he was fishing, he hears Laurel in the lake screaming, and he thinks that she's drowning. So he swims to save her. He can barely speak any English. And, he's swimming to save this woman, and she's like, get off me, like fighting him off. I'm not drowning, So from then on, she was known as the woman who wasn't drowning, until he saw her one day at the market. And they introduced themselves to one another, and him letting her know he recognized her, he dumps his head into a bucket and screams in order to say, that's you, And I thought it was like the cutest moment. And the man that they had to play younger Hyde, I was just like, yeah, I'd have ran away with him. He was some nice looking, y'all. At the time, Laura was dating some boring guy named Marshall that works at the bank that her dad owns. And her dad really wants her to be with this man, wants her to marry this man. He's going to give him a promotion at the bank. Like, this is the life that's set out for her, but it's not the life that she wants for herself. So she and Hyde end up dating and spending a lot of time together and falling in love and having sex and the whole nine, And then one day she comes home and her dad is like up waiting for her, and he tells her that she is expected to say yes to Marshall's proposal. So she packs her things and hitches a cab over to Hyde's place and asks him to run away with her. Hyde couldn't leave his family behind, so she left. And she couldn't get far. She got to Pittsburgh and eventually met William and had Randall and all of that. Randall is getting annoyed at this point because he's trying to understand why William thought that Laurel OD'd right after Randall was born. And he explains that that's because that's what he thought. She did OD, but they saved her. At the hospital, she got treated like shit, just like she thought she would, which is why she took the drugs in the first place. But these white nurses, they wouldn't know that. They talking out the side of their necks about her like she's not laying right there. Like, what type of nurse does this? Okay, child racism. And then the police come because if it's not bad enough to damn near die and lose your baby, now the police come and arrest her. And her public defender makes her take a plea deal and plead guilty, which results in her ending up in jail for 5 years. And she wouldn't call her dad and ask for help. I guess she didn't want to disappoint him any more than she feels she already had. And she was also punishing herself for losing Randall. Also, she couldn't call William because they didn't have a phone. So how was she going to get in contact with him? 5 years in prison was a very painful and hard time for Laurel. And so she didn't talk a lot about it. But she said there wasn't a single night that she didn't dream about Randall. She was released in 1985, and Randall was probably like 6 or 7 around this time, maybe. And she wanted to look for him. But like how I said, he felt like she was still punishing herself. So she goes home to Aunt May's. And Aunt May helps put her back together. Aunt May tells her not to be ashamed of her track marks when she is dressing her that night when she came. She says, I had a son with a man who loved me. Like my life wasn't what this looks like. You know, I wasn't just out here doing dope and then getting pregnant, you know, for some dude I did drugs with or for a trick for drug. Like it wasn't what it looked like, you know, and she felt that it was important to say that, but she was in such grief and feeling such guilt. And she's just like sitting there telling Aunt May everything that has happened and how she can't possibly forgive herself for her son growing up thinking that she never loved him. That was very painful for her. Aunt May tells her that she has to let her grief go. And then she tells her the story of when she was in love with a married man. And, you know, maybe she was young, but she thought they were going to be together and she loved him more than life itself. She got pregnant for him, lost him, and then lost the baby. She almost let her grief swallow her whole. And then her parents kicked her out. So she came to the lake house, I'm guessing, and found her salvation there, or maybe New Orleans. I'm not too sure. I think she meant the lake house because if that's her brother, everybody's from New Orleans. At this point, I'm crying. At this point, y'all, I have been crying since Laurel walked up on her Aunt May in her garden, and her Aunt May just like made this face like she just knew how much pain she was in. Laurel goes into the lake and tries to let it out the best she could, but it was still hard. You know, things were still bleak after. But then she saw Hai at the market and they waved at each other and nodded at each other and had little small moments like that for decades because Hai had married a woman and had children. So it wasn't until years later, his wife had passed, his children had left home, and it was just him that he rekindled his relationship with Laurel. She stopped showing up to the market because she had a tumor. And she said she was done doing treatments. And from then on, he made her some food and was taking care of her from then on until she died 2 years later. And they thought she was going to die sooner than that. It was supposed to be, you know, aggressive and she was only supposed to have a little while left. But Hai came back into her life and they spent time together. He cooked and she told her stories and she talked about Randall and what happened. And when she was obviously on her deathbed, she cried to Hai that she would never be able to tell her son that she loved him. And Hai told her, you'll get your chance. Hai tells Randall and Beth that he could still hear her laugh sometimes when he's in a lake. And Beth is like, wow, Hai, you need to put this shit in podcast form. He said you call it Alex Haley's Laurel's Roots. I was dying laughing, y'all. Beth definitely brought the lightness to the moment because it was so heavy. And like y'all, I have been crying this entire episode. So Hai gets up and gives Randall the keys to the home. Okay, says it's his and that he'll see them tomorrow for breakfast. They actually went and stayed in a hotel. And while Beth was sleeping that night, Randall got up and went back to the house to kind of look around. And then, child, listen to me. Oh, Oh, yo, Sterling K. Brown just does it for me. I feel like he is like a perfect specimen of black madness. Like, I'm just saying, y'all. And there was nothing more beautiful than that shot with the moonlight shining on his body as he went and got into that water because he was naked. So you can see like all of the muscle tone to his body. And I mean, his skin is so beautifully dark. So this like the moonlight is reflecting off of his skin. And I'm just kind of like, oh my God. Whoo, Lord, y'all know how to make a moment on this damn show. He gets into the water and then he hears Laurel's laughing and she shows up, y'all. Most beautiful moment, y'all. He says that I didn't even know I was looking for you. And now I found you and you're gone. She tells him that she can see the pain in his eyes. His eyes are like hers. And that he must be tired and he needs to let it go. And he says he doesn't know how. And she tells him, yes, you do. And he takes a deep breath and he lets out this scream. Y'all, this scream that he let out, it was so cleansing. Like I felt, even though I had been crying this whole time, when he let that scream out, even for me, it felt like a release. And I wasn't the one that screamed. It was crazy. That's why I say this show is so damn good. It doesn't even matter that you cry the whole time, but they take you through such an emotional roller coaster. The ability to do it is art within itself. It's art within itself. Take away the visuals, the fact that they are able to take you with them emotionally through the show, through the shots, through the music, through the acting, through every single moment. I mean, this show is really impeccable at the end of the day. Like, oh my God. Then she tells him she loves him in Vietnamese and she leaves him. On his way home, he's in a car with Beth, and you can tell he's lighter. He's smiling. He's feeling better. He says, now I know that my parents were two flawed people that love me. And that was the whole thing for Randall, feeling like as a orphan, really, that his birth parents didn't really love him because they didn't keep him. That's what a child will think, and that's not what it was at all. They loved him so much. They made so many sacrifices for him. I mean, from William making a sacrifice to let him go so that he could have a better life because William felt like he didn't have what Randall would have needed to survive without Laurel. You know what I'm saying? And the realization that William had to go through his whole life thinking that this woman he loved so much was dead when she wasn't. Also, she can go back home and wave and smirk and have loving glances at the love of her life, who she wouldn't even get to have until the last 2 years of her life. Y'all, that shit is insane. It's insane. And it makes me feel like whenever you want to do something, you should do it. She wanted to look for her son. She should have looked for her son. You know what I'm saying? Like her and Hai wanted to be together as kids. They should have figured out a way to be together as kids. You know what I'm saying? Like I'm trying to understand why she couldn't just go live with Hai. You know what I mean? Why did she have to move to another city in order to be able to live her life freely? But it was just a beautiful story. And I think it puts a lot of things in perspective for everybody watching and for the characters, because now Randall wants to let go of any bad feelings, any negative energy. So he calls Kevin. Kevin is in the middle of turmoil, okay? Kevin is in Vancouver, driving like a bat out of hell, trying to get back to California because Madison went into labor. Obviously very early. So he's worried. He's scared. We don't know what's going to happen. And right now, he can't deal with Randall. So I guess next episode will be about Kevin. Looking forward to it. But anyway, you guys, I hope y'all enjoyed the review. Please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel if you have not already. I love y'all, and I'll see y'all in the next one.